Greetings, social media friends. Dr. Jeff Riggenbaugh back here with you on another Tips Tuesday, where I bring you a tip for dealing with the difficult people in your life. This free social media series is all part of the content from my new book and coaching program on disarming high conflict personalities. And each Tuesday, we come and bring you a little bit of free content from that material that hopefully can help you deal with the difficult people in your life. So we have started with the bully, we hit the con artist, we covered the drama mama, we covered the victim, our first 4 types of difficult personalities. Now we're moving into the home stretch, down the home stretch, starting into our final 4. And so today we're going to talk about what I call the landmine. And we'll give you 3 red flags that you might be dealing with a landmine in your life. Hopefully so you can notice it a little bit sooner and know how to prepare to deal with that person more effectively. If you haven't gotten your tip sheet yet, top 10 tips for dealing with people in your life that feel sort of make you feel like you need to walk on eggshells, click that link below, grab your tip sheet, and that will give you the top 10 tips for dealing with landmines in your life. It'll also get you on my email list, where you get an additional weekly email with other tools and resources for dealing with high conflict personalities. Today's teaching is on the landmine, and we're going to look at 3 characteristics to look at that we can consider red flags, things to look out for that maybe you catch them a little earlier in the process. And red flag number 1 has to do with moodiness. So a lot of people may be a little bit moody. Landmines are extremely moody, but once you see that side of them, again, we may be past the early detection stage. So just because a person's moody doesn't mean they're a landmine, but every landmine is going to be moody. Feel like I'm having a flashback to my intro to logic course in college. So not every moody person is a landmine, but every landmine is moody. So we want to watch for that initial moodiness. And I'm not talking about like someone who's clinically depressed. If that's the case, maybe you notice a coworker or an employee and they start having absences, or they tell you they can't get out of bed and they're coming in late for work. Or maybe it's your friend that's not, is skipping class and hasn't been meeting you for study group. And you hear that, it's been a week or 2 or 3 and they just haven't been able to get out of bed. And no, that's depression. Okay, that may be clinical depression. It's not moodiness. Moodiness is directly tied to environmental triggers, things that happen in life. So this is the person may come into work in the morning and they're in a great mood. It's a great day and they're happy. And, somebody says something and boom, by the 10 o'clock meeting, they are, you do not want to cross them. And then maybe you run into them after lunch and they're all worried about something. They're very anxious and they're really worked up. So we want to be looking at the moodiness, people in your personal life, people in your volunteer organizations or your church group. You just never kind of know what to expect when the person shows up at the board meeting or at Sunday school or in the Bible study or in your educational setting. You just never know what kind of mood the student's going to come into. How are they going to present that day? Okay. And so it's this unpredictability. Maybe some of you are familiar with the self-help book that was written entitled Stop Walking on Eggshells. So these are the people that just kind of make you feel like you got to walk on eggshells. You never quite know what you're going to say that's going to set them off. You may never sort of feel like you have to tiptoe around the landmines, so to speak. So regardless of setting in life, we're looking for that moodiness. It shifts over time, and it can be different emotions. It's not that they're always down. So, maybe they are angry, and then 3 hours later, they're anxious and worried. And, then later they're in a great mood. They're happy. And then maybe, an hour later, they feel guilty. And so you're looking for these shifts in mood that always have to do with something in life. Now, you might not know what that thing is. And, as a therapist or a behavioral health provider, it's our job to identify those triggers because that's how we do the work with them. But just in dealing with them in the workplace or at your place of worship or in your personal life. Your goal is not to, help them become less sensitive to the buttons that they have, so to speak. Your goal is just to manage the relationship in a way that you can do what you need to do in that setting. So maybe they just got a text that set them off. And oftentimes you'll have no idea what it is, but we're just looking for moodiness. Red flag number one. Excuse me. Red flag number two, and this may be less obvious depending upon the setting that you work with them in or are with them in, if it's in your personal life. But these people have a very difficult time being alone. So if you notice it at work, they just can't seem to work by themselves. They're always flocking to somebody, wanting to have a conversation. They can't work alone. If they're in your personal life, this is the person that, always has to be jumping from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next. And maybe you get to thinking, gee, I don't know that I've known her that she hasn't had a boyfriend of some kind. And maybe the relationship wasn't the healthiest, but there was always somebody there. So when you peek behind the curtains, if that's appropriate, given the role that you have with them and the setting that you deal with them in, you'll notice that this group of folks just can't be alone. Red flag number three, this group has a tendency to cut people off. If they... Our fancy clinical terminology is idealization and then devaluation. So they may think you're just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then if you happen to trigger them in some way, boom, you get knocked off the pedestal and you're on the floor. You're in the trash heap. And sometimes this group of people will keep you there. So there oftentimes are going to be multiple people or organizations or churches or jobs or whatever that the friend groups that the person has cut off. Now, you can meet people that may not fit in this category that have cut a number of people out of their lives, and that can be done in a more healthy way. But this group, it's frequent. It's usually across context. So they've usually quit several jobs. They've usually dumped several boyfriends or girlfriends. They have usually, maybe they've jumped from one church to the next or one youth group to the next, to the next, to the next. Maybe they've dropped out of one junior college and moved on to two or three others. And here's another thing to sort of hone in on. They stay mad at that person or that group of people. Very rarely do they come back and say, oh, I really blew a good opportunity there. I think I could have really learned something at that internship. Or, gee, he might have really been a pretty good guy and I just got ticked off over this one thing. So when you talk with them, and in the interview process, you can't get into some of this interpersonal stuff, but you can look at, previous job history. Do they have multiple jobs on their resume over the course of the last year or two or 10 or whatever it is? And do they still speak poorly about a number of those previous employers? Do they still harbor resentment? Do they still seem to have zero respect for these previous employers? Or if it's a personal situation, do they continue to talk poorly about the ex or the family member? Maybe they hate their mom or whatever the case may be. So a proneness to cut people off and keep them out of their lives and stay angry at them. Continue to talk about them in demeaning and diminished ways. And again, it's not just one person. Some people have two or three or four unhealthy people they need to cut out of their life. That's fine. That's something else. But if we see this pattern of ending relationships and staying mad, continuing to view that person or organization or whatever it is in a diminished capacity, that is red flag number three, that you may be dealing with a landmine. Number one, excessively moody. Okay. Number two, excuse me, just can't be alone. And then number three, tendency to cut people off and continue to view those people or organizations in a diminished capacity of some way. Hope those red flags were helpful. If you want the rest of the red flags that you might be dealing with a landmine or an eggshells employee, as I talk about in my corporate trainings, you can get those in the book. If you haven't gotten my tip sheet yet for top 10 tips for dealing with landmines, click that link below. Get your top 10 tips for dealing with emotionally volatile people in your life, and consider picking up a copy of the book as well. where you can get strategies for dealing with landmines, as well as all of the other types of difficult people in your life. Hope that was helpful. Hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.